Hello, scholars. My name is Dr. Karis Dillon, and the goal of this channel is to make academic subjects easier to understand. In the last video, we discussed psychology and learning. In this video, we're going to talk about psychology and intelligence. First off, I want to say that I've been a public school teacher and college professor for a total of 17 years. I have worked with thousands of students, and I truly believe that every student can learn and that every single student has their strengths and challenges. I do believe that pairing a student with the correct teacher makes all the difference. A really effective and excellent teacher can reach many different learning styles and can motivate students to love to learn. What is so neat about the human brain is that it's constantly processing, analyzing, perceiving, planning, and remembering information. The human brain is always active, even when we're sleeping. Thankfully, we don't have to notice when our brain is working. It would be a mess if we were constantly thinking about the fact that we were thinking, right? In the field of psychology, you're going to hear the term cognition quite a bit. Cognition means all the items that our brain is capable of doing, including thinking, processing, perceiving, problem solving, memorizing, judging, comparing and contrasting, analyzing, etc. Cognition is what makes us different from the rest of the animal world. The cerebral cortex of the human brain allows us to take part in higher level thinking skills. It helps us to learn language, have emotions, be creative, be innovative, and solve problems. Human beings are constantly being bombarded with sensory information from our environment, and the nervous system helps us to receive and process the information by sending the signals to the human brain. As the brain receives the information and thoughts are created, the information can be used right away for language or can be stored for future conversational usage. Think of the human brain as a file cabinet of sorts. We store items in our brain like files, which could be considered concepts, and then draw from that information when we need it. Those concepts, files, might be organized by memories, ideas, by language, or by images. Essentially, our ideas and items that we've memorized are combined to form cognitive structures. Every single human being organizes and categorizes their information differently. A person's concepts can be extremely complex or they can be simple. Humans often use prototypes to help organize their information as well. A prototype is a person's best representation or example of a concept. Most concepts are categorized into two different groupings, natural or artificial concepts. Natural concepts are those that are created naturally through a person's experiences, either directly or indirectly. If you've owned a variety of dogs in the past, as pets, you have an experiential knowledge about dogs. An artificial concept could be considered something that you learn about in school, like how to add and subtract different numbers. Artificial concepts often build off one another. Each human being builds what is known as schemata. A schemata is a mental concept about a topic or collection of topics. It's a way that a person organizes what they know so they can draw from that information in the present or future. If an individual is learning a new subject, they'll often draw upon their schemata to help them take any new information in. When an individual has a role schema, this means they have a set of assumptions about a subject or a person. These assumptions may or may not be true depending upon the person. In some ways, role schemas are a way for individuals to further categorize information that they're learning. Sometimes human beings just haven't had the experience of being elsewhere and being around something that is different. An event schema is a social script that a human being uses when they take part in a social world. As an example, think about the social rules that are involved in riding an escalator. I don't ride an escalator on a regular basis, but I essentially know the rules. People may hesitate in front of the moving stairs and take time to regulate their brain to jump on a moving object and then step upon it when they feel safe. If the person is older or has small children, hopefully individuals are patient with them as they get on the escalator. If there isn't a person ahead of you on an escalator, it's generally seen as fine to step up the stairs, especially if you're in a hurry. When there are people that are ahead of you, it's important to be patient and ride the escalator to the top. People don't normally stand backwards on an escalator or walk down the stairs when the elevator is headed upward. Event schemas are learned and are considered automatic. It is interesting that people that are older or younger can more easily change these scripts if they see fit, but regular aged individuals are expected to follow event schemas. Language is the way that human beings regulate their cognition to one another. Systematic rules and grouped words are used to transmit information from one person to another. There are ways that human beings communicate ideas with one another besides language, though. Posture, odor, tone, arm, or leg movements, and the motion of eyes can convey different ideas and emotional states. These forms of communication help human beings to develop and retain social relationships with each other. Spoken, written, and signed language have various parts to them. Generally, language is made up of grammar and a lexicon. A lexicon means the particular words that are part of a language, or essentially its vocabulary. Grammar means the rules that are part of language, including where the verb, noun, and adverb might sit within the sentence. How does a child develop language? As psychologists have learned more about language, it's interesting to note that children all over the world learn language given the same patterns. Children are born with an innate time period for the development of language. If they do not learn language during this period of time, it is nearly impossible for them to master that language. As a person gets older, it becomes harder and harder for them to learn a new language without an accent. Children all over the world begin learning language at a very early age. Even before children are born, they can acquire language within the womb. Babies in the womb can distinguish their mother's language from others. When babies are born, they tend to pay attention to people speaking the language they were used to hearing in the womb as compared to others that are speaking a different language. By the time a child is 1 year old, they lose the ability to hear the sounds of all languages and can only hear those that they've heard in the environment within the last year. Every baby that develops language begins to babble at a certain stage. Babbling consists of using syllables over and over again of a certain language. Even babies that are born to two deaf parents using sign language will still babble. In a majority of cases, children will produce their first words from 12 to 18 months of age. They'll continue using one word for a certain period of time. Eventually, the young child will start using two words together. This is when children begin to learn the rules of the language they're presented with. The language that children grow up with helps to define their culture and the environment around them. There are words in one language that may not exist in another. In some ways, language can influence the way that we cognitively think about things. This is known as linguistic determinism. Once the human brain has developed to a certain point, it is capable of solving problems. It is important that when a human being is attempting to solve a problem, that they first understand the components of the problem. There are different problem-solving strategies that an individual can use when attempting to find a solution. One of the strategies that people use to solve problems is trial and error. This means the person will attempt haphazard ways of attempting to solve the problem. Another strategy to solving problems is by using an algorithm. With this strategy, there are step-by-step instructions that allow someone to achieve a desired end. The best way to think about this strategy is to think of it like a recipe. Put the correct items and steps into the recipe and it will turn out. A third strategy is known as heuristic, which is a framework for helping to solve a problem. These are also known as mental shortcuts. Think of a heuristic as a hint for helping to solve a problem. A hint or shortcut is generally used when there's too little time to find the solution, when there's too much information to go through, or there is too little information to come to a conclusion. Why are all problems not solved? Why do certain problems seem more challenging than others? One of the main reasons why people do not succeed when solving problems is because they keep attempting to solve the problem in the same way over and over again. This is known as a mental set. Individuals also get stuck in what is called functional fixedness. This is when a person cannot imagine or use an object in a way in which it was intentionally made for. Those of us living in snow-ridden areas in the 1980s used to use bread bags in our boots in order to keep the water out. Boots in the 80s weren't that waterproof, and so bread bags helped to keep our feet dry and less cold. Other items that make solving problems difficult include the anchoring bias, the confirmation bias, and the representative bias. The anchoring bias means the person spends all their time on one piece of information and ignores the rest. The confirmation bias means the individual focuses on their beliefs and values in an attempt to solve the problem. Representative bias is when a person stereotypes a person or item unintentionally and they cannot arrive at the answer because of this. It would surprise people to learn that various forms of intelligence are important when solving difficult problems. What is intelligence, though? Psychologists have been attempting to define intelligence for hundreds of years. Raymond Cattell in 1940 said that intelligence came in two forms: crystallized intelligence and fluid intelligence. Crystallized intelligence means knowledge that has been acquired and an ability to recall that knowledge when needed. If you play Trivial Pursuit and recall information to help you solve the questions, you are recalling crystallized information. Fluid intelligence means the ability to understand personal relationships and solve problems. This could be called common sense, and it helps a person to solve the problems of daily life. Howard Gardner studied intelligence and created his multiple intelligence theory. He believed there were 8 intelligences, and I do believe he has increased these in the last couple of years. The first 8 he listed were logical, mathematical, musical, body, kinesthetic, spatial, linguistic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalistic. Those in education often use this theory to include as many different learning styles in their teaching lessons as possible. In the last couple of decades, emotional intelligences have been defined and discussed. Emotional intelligence means the ability to understand one's own as well as others' emotions, social behaviors, and culture. Individuals that have a high emotional intelligence have incredible social skills. For many years, psychologists thought that IQ tests were the true test of someone's intelligence. IQ stands for Intelligence Quotient. IQ tests are still used today as one measure of determining if a student needs extra help or if they are gifted. The first IQ test was created by Sir Francis Galton in the late 19th century. The first reliable IQ test was created by Alfred Binet. The French government asked Binet to create a test to show whether students were having trouble with verbal tasks. Eventually, the IQ test became known as the Stanford-Binet Intelligence Scale. If an IQ score shows that a student is in need of special resources or attention, what can an educational facility do to help? Would this be considered a learning disability? Learning disabilities are conditions that impact the manner in which a student thinks or learns. Usually, learning disabilities tend to center on language or difficulties with reading the language. Usually, most children with learning disabilities are not noticed until they reach school age. Learning disabilities do not mean the child has a low IQ. These disabilities are most prevalent with children who are of average to above average intelligence. Well, that is the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and click that like button. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will talk with you soon.